And the universe and people, we're always creating and we're always recreating. And that's what this universe does. That's what energy does. That's what consciousness does, is we're constantly recreating ourselves. We're recreating our reality. We are recreating the universe. And people are very powerful and they don't understand this. They don't understand how powerful human beings are. And once we begin having a peaceful nature, we'll be able to have a peaceful world. But it begins with us first, every individual.
Welcome to a Broaderlands podcast. The opinions expressed on Broaderlands podcasts are those of the guest speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of the host or Broaderlands podcast. Susanna, welcome to Broaderlands podcast. What an honor to have you on.
Oh, thank you. It's really an honor to talk with you today. Thank you.
Yeah, I've been listening to you and your story and your life, and even, you're a very interesting person, and I look forward to learning from you and talking to you. You're a medium, animal communicator, death doula, author of Living Beyond Death. Thanks for coming on. I look forward to this. Before we get started, ever since I had my awakening, it seemed like a lot of the UFO ETs, the paranormal, the unseen world, is it all part of one spiritual reality? Because for me, it all goes together. And it seems like in some spiritual communities, can't talk about ETs, don't talk about reincarnation. It just depends. But for me, it just all went together automatically.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. When you think about our universe, our reality, there are probably just uncountable numbers of dimensions within this reality. And dimensions that have yet to be discovered. And who's to say that we're the only ones? I think that's really arrogant to think that we're the only ones in the universe. And with so much information coming out and disclosure about the UFOs and people, pilots in the Navy and so forth, and we have this, the radar screens and so forth. It's like people having near-death experiences. Nobody believed them for a long time, and everybody poo-pooed them. The doctors poo-pooed them, and there's been so many people that have had near-death experiences that it's pretty mainstream now. And so I think the possibility of ETs out there are absolutely the same thing. We can't be alone. And I know from my personal experience with my UFO and ET experiences and my husband's ET experiences that we are not alone, and we're all from some kind of ET family. This is just a blink of an eye being here in this reality, and we're here for a reason and a purpose. Usually there's so many people that I've done reading for that have their ET family come in, and they've been with people their entire lives. Now, when they make contact with someone, everything I talk about is my opinion and from my personal experiences, that when they make contact with someone, which is usually telepathic, before there's any kind of physical contact or seeing a UFO, they'll make telepathic connections with people. And they don't usually do that unless a person is authentic and ethical. So even though someone might have an ET family, they may not make a connection with that person if they're not ethical and they're not authentic and true to themselves. And so that's kind of how the way I feel about it. We're not alone. Never have been alone.
Mm. Do you feel there's a difference between spirituality and religion? And I'm not trying to create this division, but
Right.
just to understand, is there a difference? Because in religion you hear about a burning bush, angels that came from heaven to earth,
Right.
demons. You hear about all kinds of stuff, the Elohim or giants.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
but when it comes to talking about aliens and stuff, that's shut off. But they're believing a burning bush talking and stuff.
Well, I think we were born with spirituality within us. I mean, look how many different religions there are and different belief systems in spirituality, metaphysics, and we're born with that. Whether you make a choice of being an atheist, that's still a belief. Whether you believe in religion and the beliefs of religion, that's up to you. But I think we're all born with that sense. I think it's within every human being to search for some kind of greater meaning and what our personal meaning is. And I mean, we have over 8 billion people in the world. So you're looking at 8 billion different realities because everyone interprets information in their own way, in their own unique way, based on their belief systems and their perceptions about life and their experiences. So it's no wonder that we have conflicts and different opinions. And everybody is, I tell people this all the time, all roads will lead back to you. No matter what path you are on, all roads will lead back to you. So whatever journey you're on, if you choose the religion, if you choose metaphysics or whatever, and I know there's people out there that practice darker kinds of faith. I mean, really dark. I mean, I've had people come for a reading who have come out of some of these dark religions and cults and things like that, and it's very traumatizing. But all of those beliefs are here, and we cause the divisions. Human beings cause the divisions. When you have an experience where you can experience your true self and your higher self, I guess, if you want to call it that. I had an experience that lasted just a few seconds where I was out of body, it seemed like, but it was like this reality became just a little tiny pinprick, and I was out in the universe, I guess. I was in a dimension, a space, and I was experiencing my true self. And I was viewing myself as well as experiencing myself. And I was thinking, man, I am just ancient. And it was like never ending with this ancient until I feel like, finally dawned on me within a nanosecond that we are all ancient. There is no beginning to us and there's no end to us. And there is, when we are within our true self, there is no self-judgment and there is no other judgment. And there is an unbelievable peace and love. And that's what the universe is made of. It's all, our connection is love. And we get here and we forget all of that.
I love that. A lot of people are having brought up near-death experiencers, and a lot of people are having alien and UFO contact or sightings and so on. Even feeling like someone talking to them, like a loved one.
Uh-huh.
Are these all doorways to spiritual awakenings? And how do you define an awakening?
Okay, I kind of believe in a different way about awakenings because it seems like a lot of people are looking for that big grand awakening. I believe that we have awakenings all through our life. And this is when we mature, when we have more of a greater perception and awareness of ourselves, when we know ourselves on a deeper level. We know our emotions. We come to being able to love ourselves, not in a vain way, but when we truly love ourselves and love who we are and why we're here, we have these awakenings along the way. We get nudged along, and some awakenings are greater than others. Instead of awakenings, I usually say greater awareness, that you have more of an awareness of yourself and awareness of life. And, so and a lot of these awakenings can happen after a traumatic event. There was, in my own case, when things started to open up for me, I had a very high fever. I had a kidney infection when I was 3. And my mother was very worried that I was going to die, which she told me later. And I remember my fever being so high that they bathed me in alcohol to keep it down. Now, this was in 53. 53, 54, that I had this kidney infection. And what that does for some people, what an illness can do for someone, and what a very high fever can do for someone, is it changes the cellular structure within us. And when things happen within us, then our body responds. And when our insides change, and we have these traumatic events or an illness like that we recover from, it changes our structure. And so mine was at 3. That was the first thing. Because when true channels and true mediums are born into it, just like any kind of person with a great gift and talent, like an athlete or an artist, a musician, anything in life that you have passion for and that you were born to do. It's the same thing with channels and mediums and people that do energy work and so forth. And my second one was at the age of 9, which was my first UFO sighting. And that was when my dad left. And so that was another traumatic event. Going into, and then there were some smaller things in my life. But then when I was in my early 20s, right when I met my husband, Tom, and I was taking his ESP classes, and I was living in Milwaukee and in a Victorian home, and there were a lot of students there. It was a large home with a lot of rooms, and we were just down the street from the University of Milwaukee, and University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee. And I had an upper room that looked out on the street, and I was in there with my dog. I had a water bed. The dog was on the water bed, and all of a sudden the room started rumbling. And the bed started moving like waves, and the dog was freaking out. The curtains in the room were going back and forth. The rocking chair was going back and forth. The radio went on, and the room shook like there was an earthquake. And I was totally freaking out. And so I ran downstairs to my roommates and I said, "Did you feel that?" No. And I said, "You didn't feel that earthquake?" And they said, "No." And so I went back upstairs and I had a wall phone right outside of my room, and it rang, and I picked it up, and it was Tom, my husband, which we were just dating at the time. And he said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "No, they shook my room." And he said, "I'm coming to get you." And so he drove an hour to pick me up and get me out of the house. And that was a terrifying experience. And when I finally went back to the house after about a week, okay, everybody, I've only told like 1 or 2 people this. So now I'm telling the world about it. I was so freaked out that I went up to my room and I had all kinds of, I had astrology books and, other metaphysical books. And I took all those books and I went down to the alley behind the house. And I put them in a 50-gallon drum and I burned them all. I was like, what the hell is happening here? And, but I later found out, and that, it just terrified me. And so later, I asked Abram, who was the personality that my husband channels, I asked him, what was that? What happened? And he said, well, that was necessary. It was Abram and the other higher beings that have been with me all my life, and Tom, and they said that they did that for me to release a lot of negative energy that I had been carrying on within over my lifetime, which came from a very harsh childhood, and I carried a lot of sadness and a lot of I had no self-worth, really, when it comes down to it. And so that was their way of helping me release all of that.
Wow.
And to get that energy out of my body through terror. So, and which opened the door farther for me to do mediumship. And so not all experiences, not all awakenings or experiences that show us more of ourselves and our emotions and where we can become more aware of ourselves is not going to be pretty. It's not always tied up in a pretty bow. And so, if you've had traumatic experiences, take a look at it in a different way, in a different perception, and ask what it did for you. How did it change you? What did it do for you? And how did you use that experience? And how did you use that energy?
I love that. I came back, had my, in Alcoholics Anonymous, they talk about educational variety of awakenings, and there's also those big ones. And I think there's many of them, like you said, there's different, from small little awakenings, little aha moments to powerful, painful experiences like myself experienced as well. And it was Carl Jung that said there's no coming to consciousness without pain, or Eckhart Tolle says at the beginning of addiction there is pain, and at the end of addiction there is pain. And coming from my childhood, you brought up abandonment issues. When my dad left, that really hurt me and affected me in so many ways I wasn't aware of for a very long time.
Yes.
But do you believe that childhood trauma, we come in with trauma to help us have a deeper awakening? Is that helping assist us in some kind of weird way? I also believe that we can have like the God abandonment, and like that cosmic abandonment where we feel alone.
Right. Now, with my belief system, I believe in reincarnation. I also believe, and I talk a lot about this in my book, that we design our lives before birth. And we design it with people that we make agreements with or pacts with or whatever. And I'd like to tell you, I hope I don't get too off track where I forget what I want to say. But there was a dream that I had that, and I was in a different dimension, and dreams are a whole nother aspect. And I do a lot of dimensional dreaming. And so I was in another dimension, found myself in another dimension, and I was at a lake, this beautiful lake. And there was a boardwalk, that's on the level with the water. And I was on this, I was off to the side. And so there was like this boardwalk going out. It kind of made a T. And all of a sudden this woman appeared in front of me, and she had on a one-piece black bathing suit. Her hair was dark. It was almost black. It was a very, very dark brown, and it was just below the collarbone. She was soaking wet, and she looked right at me and she said, "What are you doing here?" And I went like that, and she just disappeared. And then I noticed off to the left, there was an outside bar, like a tiki bar. I know that's not politically correct to call it a tiki bar anymore, because it takes from another culture, you know. And anyway, so there was this outside bar, and there were people sitting around it, and there were two gentlemen that were having a conversation, and I knew that they were working out something, that they were going to be born in the same time frame, and they were just making their agreements and whatever they are going to mean to each other when they come into this reality. And they were smoking and having drinks, and people were having a really good time. And this is what this place was. And I knew this while I was in there, in that dimension. I knew that this place was a place people were gathering to work out what their life was going to be and with whom. And then I walked over to another area, and it's not like I walked over there. It's like dreaming, where you're here, and then all of a sudden you're there, and there's no traveling. You're just there. And there was this large circle, and there were these painted white rocks that surrounded the circle. And behind every rock was a World War II veteran. And they were all in their briefs, right? Which I thought was kind of funny. And in this circle, I looked into this circle, and it was like a pit, and it was all like swirling clouds of gray and white, and one by one, they would dive into it. And so I saw about 3 diving in, and I knew that that was when they were going to be born, that they were diving into this reality. So, now I did get off track, and I forgot what was your question again?
Well, you brought up about reincarnation.
Yes. Yeah. So, okay. So, yes, we come into this life knowing what we're being born into. And we set up our own struggles and what is going to help us become more aware of ourselves, how to use energy, how to create reality. And we're still not at that point. It's taken decades to get where we are right now. But if people understood that their thoughts are energy, their emotions are energy, and that everything that exists outside of us first exists within us. And I was just talking to someone the other day about the Akashic records, and I explained to her it's not some building in the sky or, some place that's being guarded with all human records. The Akashic records are within us. We have universal knowledge within us. And that's what the Akashic records are, is universal knowledge of every thought, every emotion. And when I had that experience of experiencing myself, I knew intuitively while I was in this experience that I was a culmination of every thought, every feeling, and every lifetime I've ever had, whether it was in this reality, in this physical reality, whether it was another dimension of this reality, or a reality or dimension in between lives, in between physical lives. We are all that. We are all that. And every life that we have experienced is within us. It is within us. And so we come in and we bring in challenges that may have, you haven't really resolved in another lifetime, and you decide to do that in this lifetime. It's all individualized. It's all up to the person. It all orbits around our beliefs
I love
about
that.
who we are.
So you both definitely believe in we bring in past life trauma, because if you tell a trauma
Mm-hmm.
therapist that we bring in past life trauma, they'll sound like Scooby Doo. Yeah.
I know. I know. I know. It's but and I just had a reading the other day. I think it was yesterday, where I also explained to the woman that we can't use a past life as a default when we think we're having a trauma about something. We need to take a look at what's happening in the present moment and in this present life first, before you go looking at a past life. Because human beings, and this is worldwide, we are great at fooling ourselves. We are great at denial. We are great at protecting our pain. And so I try to encourage people to take a look at your life right now and the experiences that you've had. Yes, you can have experiences that you bring in, talents too. It's not all negative, talents too. Who's to say that an artist hasn't had 5 lifetimes to build up to being an artist or a musician, or any of the famous people? How many lifetimes have they had to develop that? I know of many past lives that I've had through visions and feelings and talking to Abram, Tom's personality, that I have spent numerous lives, 4 lives right in a row, as being a scientist and starting out as an apprentice. And each life I graduated until I became the scientist. And so we don't know, we carry every life that we've had within us. And you mentioned those aha moments. When we have those aha moments, I believe that change, that aha, has already happened within us. And that aha moment is when it reaches our conscious mind. So it's already happened within us. And we have that, because it's reached the conscious mind. That's how I see it.
No, I love that. And, I agree with you. And I've always believed in reincarnation since I was a little boy. I remember, like watching Indiana Jones for the first time as a kid. And I knew I'd been in that type of environment, or those old Kung Fu movies in the 80s that are being translated in ancient China. Like that inner knowing that it was too familiar for me.
Yeah.
Even watching Star Trek or Star Wars, like I've been in those environments before, but then that got flooded out for a little bit when I started to experience the human experience and trauma and the conditioning. But when I had my awakening, I went back to those teachings. And right before my awakening, my dad passed away, and I had a shared death experience with him.
Awesome.
But I also, I found the Bhagavad Gita early on in my awakening, talking about how we don't die, and that confirmed what I experienced with my father. At the same time, it goes back to when I was a kid, feeling like I knew I had been in India before. I've lived there before, so it's just I don't think that's all a coincidence,
No.
And
Yeah.
but what's your take on having multiple lives at one time?
I believe that because of our giant, timeless, always has been, always will be, true self, that I believe we're just a portion of that true self.
Mm.
And I also believe that there could be two other me's in the world. I may never meet them, but yes, I believe that we can have several lives in the same reality at the same time.
Yeah, that's interesting. I almost feel like that movie Avatar. Sometimes I feel like this is a game, right? And there's
It
this
is.
ultimate reality where our
Mm-hmm.
true self is, and then
Mm-hmm.
we're jumping into these
Mm-hmm.
little like the movie Avatar, and we jump
Mm-hmm.
into these, put our consciousness into a different type of body or character or being, and then we take off into this dream state world
Yeah.
to expand our consciousness
Yeah.
or some experience. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know, just and then maybe that's the collective consciousness, the Akashic records, that it
Mm-hmm.
continues to grow and expand through
Yeah.
our experiences. God experiencing God.
Yeah. It's a
Yeah,
good way to put it. Yeah.
it's just interesting. I would love
Mm-hmm.
for you to share your story on Peru because I think that shared humanity is very important to talk about.
When I went to Peru, I went with a small group of people into the Amazon, and I wrote about this in the book. And I was part of we had 4 ceremonies of doing ayahuasca. And there was, to prepare ourselves for the ceremonies, we drank this liquid. It's, my memory serves me correct, it's called Ohe.
Mm.
And it's very caustic. And so we had to drink several bowls, and we would drink a bowl, and then we would have to drink a lot of water because it was so caustic that it would burn our insides up. But it was a cleansing, and it would get rid of any parasites or worms that people had. And so I started having visions after drinking this, and I was seeing these small creatures, human-like, with 2 arms, 2 legs, and they were creatures. They were dimensional creatures that took care of the little stream that ran through the compound where we were, and they took care of the forest. Now, and being in Peru, I felt like I was home.
Wow.
So I know that I had a life there, and I think it was I had a vision about it that I lived in nature. I lived in the forest, in the Amazon, and I was alone, and that's the way I lived my life. And so I saw these creatures, and they took care of nature around us. And then we did the ceremonies, and they were just amazing. The visions were incredible. We went through a ceremony of dying before one of the ceremonies where there was a sandy area, and they had dug these very shallow graves that we laid down in, and the people in the compound, the cooks and other people that took care of us, they would come, the women would come, and they sat next to us and wailed, and were crying over our death. And, it was all symbolic. Excuse me. And during the ceremonies, the one thing that I came away from that experience was not to be afraid of my own mind.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was having, all through my life, I've been having psychic experiences, and with people coming to visit me in my dreams and so forth. But to really open up was, in a way, I didn't know what I was opening up to. I'm pretty much self-taught. I went to mediumship development classes with someone that I had read about that was close to me, not about 4 hours away. And I didn't get much out of it. The only thing I got out of that was knowing that I wasn't crazy, with all these people, coming and standing next to my bed and everything else. And I didn't quite like the teaching because they taught in fear. And I'm not like that. I don't fear anything out there. And I've never had any negative spirit try to mess with me or do anything. Now, I've had people come through who were going to, like the day before of someone's reading, and the spirit of whomever's going to come through for them. I've had a couple of them put me through the ringer emotionally, but that was how they were in life. And so once I understood that, it was fine. But I've never had any negative spirit try to do anything to me or anything like that. I just don't, I feel like I'm my own protection. So I don't use the white light bubble and all of that, because I think that's based in fear that somebody will get you. And I don't believe that. That's one thing in metaphysics, and people that do this work, the first thing that they really must do, is get rid of their fear. And so anyway, what I got out of the ayahuasca experience was not to be afraid of my own mind. And after that, the door was wide open.
Wow. Have you ever heard anybody talk about, like, I've heard people, I've interviewed people where they did plant medicine and next thing you know, they're in a spacecraft.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in my visions during the ceremonies, every ceremony I saw 3 UFOs. In my mind's eye, I saw three UFOs up in the sky, stationary, that they didn't leave for the entire time I was there. And then I did find myself on a craft.
Wow.
And I decided, I felt uneasy because there was, they were trying to decide something about me. And I thought, well, if you don't know, and you're standing around trying to decide, I'm out of here. So I left and I went on to another vision. So yeah, I can see that. I can see that.
With all your experiences, I know you talked about your Peru experience, spirit communication, ETs, contact, animal communication, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
How do you make sense of all the racism, the division, the violence, the war happening in today's world? I'd love for you to touch on your spiritual insight on today's divided reality for many.
Things are pretty crazy right now. Pretty upside down. And I think truly not in a good way, that a lot of people are touching on I don't want to say insanity, because I don't want to judge people. But there's a lot of craziness that's going on. People don't know themselves. And a lot of the hate and division that we see is because people don't know themselves and they don't love themselves. And a lot of this, if you want to be philosophical about it, they're spewing hate, which tells me what they're feeling about themselves inside. It's like my mother. I can equate this to the treatment I received from my mother, that everything that she was telling me is what she believed about herself. And I think it's true on a mass scale. People don't love themselves. They don't know what love really is. They don't know what humanity is. We've moved so far away from that. And I think, now this is just me, and this is not a conspiracy theory or anything like that, but I think we have to go back to eating good food, eating food that's not poisoned, because that will change us. That poison in our bodies, we've got it in our food, we've got it in the earth, we've got it in the water, we've got it in the air, and we have so many chemicals, and we can't help but being affected by it. And plus, children, people, not just children, people need to connect with nature because we're a part of nature. There's no division between us and nature. We are nature and nature is us. And the children and a lot of adults were so busy that we don't get out in nature. Mm-hmm. And you've heard of forest bathing, right? Mm-hmm. Especially popular in Japan, I think. That we need to get out. We need to get among nature in the trees, and whether you do that in your backyard by planting flowers and other kinds of plants and pollinator plants, and to help with the bees and all of that. But we need to get back to eating cleanly. And there's so many people in the world, and I think this is another problem. It is that there's so many people, and it's how are we going to feed everyone? And so I think that's one of the first places to start. But people have to decide. They have to decide who they want to be. What kind of person do you want to be? And that really comes down to it. And a lot of people don't know. Most people don't know truly who they are. And they haven't faced their traumas and their pain. And people just need to understand their own emotions and take a look at our own emotions, because people are very reactive. And I think we just need to calm down and see what serves us, what doesn't serve us, and who we want to be. What kind of person do you want to be?
I love that, because I remember talking to Neil Donald Walsh on here, and I told him the problem with love thy neighbor as thyself is most people don't love themselves anymore. Mm-hmm. So they're only loving mm-hmm. as much as they love themselves, and most people don't love themselves, so they can't love others.
Yeah.
So they can't see the self in all beings, or shared divinity or humanity. It's thrown out the window because all the fear, our mental diet. We have to also look at our mental diet, where we're feeding our minds or being fed in our minds.
Exactly. We're being manipulated at every point. And that's why we don't watch the news. We don't listen to the news. We're barely on social media. And if people would get off social media and not look at the news or listen to the news, and do this for, I know it's going to be hard, do it for a week. And if you can do it for a week, try it for 2 weeks and see how you change. See how you change. And if you can, do it for a month and really see a change. And would it be okay if I read something?
Sure.
A real short thing from the book. This was from Automatic Writing.
Yeah.
From one of my higher beings, I guess part of my entourage, and it's about love. And I write, below is information I receive from a guide who sometimes communicates with me through automatic writing. Love matters. Love is the driving force of the universe, which is consciousness. Consciousness is love. Love is the primary law of the universe. It would behoove all to think of our universe as a living, breathable, fluctuating, ever-expanding and contracting entity whose sole purpose is creation. Love is deeply implanted in the purpose of the universe, and it is out of love that you exist. It is because of love that you are here to express your own purpose, your own individual and collective expressions of the very love that brought you here. Love does not conquer all because love is the all. It is everything. It is out of love that you need to understand that consciousness is the basis of the whole of existence, and love is the binding factor of all life. When humans understand the fountainhead of love and embrace the love of one's own existence and personhood, love will stream to Mother Earth and all her inhabitants. No longer will creatures fear man as the destructors, and will see man as protectors and co-creators of this majestic reality, our shared universe and universes beyond.
Mhm.
So I think that's what it's all about. And the universe and people, we're always creating and we're always recreating. And that's what this universe does. That's what energy does. That's what consciousness does, is we're constantly recreating ourselves. We're recreating our reality. We are recreating the universe. And people are very powerful and they don't understand this. They don't understand how powerful human beings are. And once we begin having a peaceful nature, we'll be able to have a peaceful world. But it begins with us first, every individual.
I love that. I totally agree with you. Do you see humanity confronting the shadow on the spiritual path at a collective level? Are we like experiencing the dark night of the soul right now for a collective awakening, hopefully?
Yeah. I mean, this has to be
Confronted?
not confronted, but there has to be a greater meaning of what we're going through right now. And there has to be a spiritual side of what we're all experiencing right now. And what we advise people to do is not worry about what other people are doing, because you cannot control people. People are going to do what they're going to do, and work on your own reality and how you want to be and how you want your reality to be. And take a very honest look at your beliefs and your judgments and make a decision.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I've heard you talk about we have to unlearn what we've been taught.
Mm-hmm.
Who do you feel is behind all of this fear we're being fed? Is there like a shadow government, negative entities, or is it just our collective ignorance creating this reality?
It's us. It's us. And yes, if you've ever watched George Carlin, and
Yeah.
there's one of his shows where he talks about how we're manipulated and the true owners of the world and who really runs the world. And so, yeah, I think the curtain is being pulled back.
What kind of advice can you give people that are trapped in fear right now? Because a lot of people are. They have anxiety. They're in fear. They're in fear of war. I mean, you turn on the TV like you said, and we're just being fed fear, 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 fear.
Yeah. Everything is. It's the fear is the great manipulator. Use fear in advertising and homeowners insurance. Don't let your house burn down. Yeah. Yeah, or everything. They do it to get an emotional response from people, and this is how we're manipulated. And you must be smart. You must be smart and take a look at how you're being led around by your emotions and from whom. And, but it's We have to change. And from the information that I have received is that the ETs, as we call them, are not going to interfere unless it comes to a point of self-destruction for us. And then they will come in.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. That's always been an interesting topic. And I guess when I'm answering my question, if I look at my life, practicing spirituality on a daily basis by applying principles, the more I catch myself with emotional reactions, my
Mm-hmm.
behaviors,
Mm-hmm.
just my engagement with others on a daily basis and looking at my behavior, taking responsibility for my life and my
Mm-hmm.
actions. That's how I can start to unlearn that
Yeah.
fear. When
Yeah.
I catch it, when you go from being it to seeing it,
Yes.
change
Yeah.
becomes possible.
Yeah.
So it's all about awareness,
Yes.
broadening
And,
awareness.
yeah. And I know people understand this, is that we are everything that we have been taught. We are everything that, our teachers, our parents, all of our experiences in life. We are a culmination of our experiences with other people, and especially children when they're not allowed to be who they are and their parents, guide them into what their parents think they should be. We need to listen to the kids. We need to take care of animals. We need to take care of the earth. We need to be the stewards of the earth, and we do. We need to unlearn all of that.
Wow.
Because we've been indoctrinated, but by so many different people and so many other people's belief systems, that we really have to take a look at everything.
And you're an animal communicator, right?
Yes, I have had many animals come through in readings that are deceased. Plus, if someone has an animal in the house and I'm doing a reading for them, the animal usually gives me information. There was a woman that I was doing a reading for, and I asked her, do you have a cat? And she said, yeah. And I said, well, the cat is telling me to tell you not to have anything to do with the last man that was in your apartment.
Wow.
And she said, well, I haven't had anybody here. And I said, just think about it. It's the last man that was in your apartment. And then she thought about it and she said, well, it was the maintenance man. And the cat was saying, stay away. Stay away from him because he's a very controlling person. And so she said, well, he did hit on me. And so cats, animals know, our pets know what's going on in our lives. And I told her he was standing in the kitchen near the counter, having a conversation with her. And she said, yeah, that's exactly where he was standing.
Wow.
So the cat gave a warning to stay away from him.
What would be the animals like cats and dogs' purpose for their lives
That
and ours?
I think mainly for our companionship.
Mm.
So many people can love an animal, a pet, and not be able to love anyone else. They have no judgment.
Yeah.
They live in the present moment and they have no judgment, and they love unconditionally. And
Yeah.
that's what people, I think that's what people crave. They need to be seen, heard, and loved.
You're right. And I love that saying, be the person your dog thinks you are.
Yeah, I love that.
Great reminder.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
What got you into becoming a death doula?
I I started seeing things on Facebook. Now this was back in 2016, and I started seeing things on Facebook about end of life doula training, And I thought, wow, this is so cool. As a medium, I'm experiencing the already deceased coming in to give information. And I thought, what would it be like and how would it be if I were on this side of death and that I sat with people who were dying? And so I went through training and it became a passion and I was just so dedicated to it. And uh, I volunteered with hospice for 4 years and as a visiting volunteer and a vigil volunteer. And I went through their program of No One Dies Alone. And it was the most amazing experience. And the only reason I stopped was COVID, because of COVID, and we weren't allowed to make any visits anymore. And then during COVID, during the time in COVID, I spent a year. I had hand surgery, and so it took about 7 months to recover from that in 2021. And so during that time, I had started on the book, and so the whole time during lockdown and while everything was going on, I wrote the book, and I just never went back to volunteering.
Mm.
And because things have just moved along in a different direction, and it was really truly amazing. And you talked about having a shared death experience, and I had 2 shared death experiences, and it was what struck me about those 2 shared death experiences was that these individuals, in the most intimate experience of their physical life, invited me along in the crossing, or what we say is they're crossing. We don't actually cross over. From my experience with working with the dying, is that you're in an. Well, I had one woman who was in and out of her body during her transition and
Wow.
last hours of living, and she was in and out of her body. She would stand next to her body watching what was going on, and then she was back in her body, and she would go back and forth. From my experience, what I believe is we don't leave through the crown chakra. Um, we don't lift. You're just in a different dimension. It's like walking from one room into another. And I know people have had visions and they've had experiences of seeing the body leave, the soul leave the body. That's their experience. That's wrapped in their belief system and maybe the person's belief system who is dying. But from my experience, when they die, they're just in the next dimension, which was what happened with one of my shared death experiences. The gentleman was standing behind me. I turned around and I thought it was the nurse coming in because I had called her to say that he had taken his last breath. And I turned around and I saw him walking out the door. Now, that ties into a superstition, a myth, that about leaving windows open and doors open so the spirit can leave, which is just superstition. What I was seeing, to me, in this reality, I was seeing him walking through the door. In his reality, this physical world did not exist for him anymore. And he was walking in whatever dimension he was going into. And so he took me along with that. And another woman had taken me along on her crossing. and I've spoken about this before. She was running through this huge field of yellow flowers, and but as she was running through this field, none of the flowers were damaged at all. And she was very elderly. I think she was in her 80s, close to 90, and she had a hard life. Never had a lot of money, that I found out from her daughter-in-law, who was there also. And when she was crossing, she reverted back to being 12 years old. And I knew that she did that because she had perfect health. She had long, beautiful hair, brown hair, and no responsibilities. And she had many responsibilities during her lifetime, and health problems and bad knees and so forth. And she was deaf, and which happened. She wasn't always deaf, but she didn't want to spend money on hearing aids. And so she read lips, which I didn't know when I went to visit her. And she was just the sweetest woman, and she would blow kisses at me as I was leaving, and she would kiss my hand when I went to visit her. And so this is, being with someone as they're passing is the most profound honor that I personally have experienced. And if you look at death and the dying process, it's extraordinarily beautiful. But not for everybody. There's a lot of people that fight death. And so and their belief system may be that they believe that they have to fight death. And so they may thrash around in the bed or try to get out, or, just won't calm down. So it all ties into what our belief system is too. But the death process, to me, is extraordinarily beautiful.
It's like a caterpillar turning into a butterfly, as
Yeah.
Dr. Walsh likes to put it
Yeah.
in Conversations of God. I thought that's a beautiful analogy.
Yeah.
I have you ever had any like last words, or where someone's already seen the other reality while they're still in the physical body and they're telling you?
Usually when they're at that state and talking to dead relatives that are there waiting for them, they're not concerned about me. They're not going to tell me about it, but they will talk about it. There was one woman, I went in to visit her, and her two daughters were there. And this was probably the fourth time that she she rallied 4 times before she really went into transitioning. And this was over a couple of months. She would get very close, and then she'd rally, and everything would be fine for a little while. And this was the final one. And I went in and I was talking to the 2 daughters, and she was in a semi-unconscious state. And she was speaking Spanish, and her daughters, I sat with her daughters, and they were telling me her conversation. And she said, well, now she's with our dad, and they're sitting at they're having coffee, and she's talking about having coffee with her husband and and other people. And so things like that. Things, they'll talk out loud or reach, out in front of them. Wow. And they'll call someone's name, or, oh, hi, Mom, or something like that. They'll be very aware of their dead relatives, their deceased relatives.
I love that. I've had some readings where, I found a really good medium, and my dad appeared, and my brother-in-law, who was shot in the head when we were younger. And I think it's a very healing experience. I'm at conference, and there's about 300 plus people around me, and I'm crying, getting this
Mm-hmm.
reading with my father and my brother-in-law that showed up. He kind of he jumped in. My dad, like I'm there to talk to my dad, and he jumps in first and gives a message for his daughter,
Mm-hmm.
which is my niece. But my one of my sisters is a Christian, and she said that's devil stuff. We're tapping into that stuff. But it
Yeah.
was a beautiful experience because, to make a long story short, my brother-in-law told me to tell his daughter, who lives in Torrance, California, where there's no blue jays just in backyards. Like there's not a lot of nature in that
Mm.
area unless you go to the beach. But all of a sudden, blue jays started popping up in her backyard, and she sent me a bunch of different pictures of blue
Oh,
jays
wow.
popping up out of nowhere in her
Yeah.
yard to share. And he said that's him thinking
Yeah.
of her. He's present, and that he loves her. And
Yeah. They find a way.
yeah,
They find a way. I have a friend out in California, where she asked for a sign from her dad, and I I I told her I wanted to tell the story, and now I don't remember the sayings on the Coke bottles. You know how
oh
um
yeah.
they would put somebody's name on there. So she grabbed a Coke, and it had her father's name on it. And then she grabbed, another time she, not too far off, after that, she grabbed another Coke, and it had another saying that her dad would say. And
Wow.
then her mother bought a Coke, and it had something that was meaningful to her on it. And so they find a way. They find a way to communicate, whether it's through, repeated song, that you hear all the time, that is associated with that person, or electricity is another uh, way of them. It's an easy way of them to communicate. Um, they'll find a way. Yeah,
Being a
that's,
medium. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, go ahead.
No, being a medium. Do you have any like heart touching experience with someone that you're working with? Um, I I I just find that fascinating as well.
There's, I always try to keep a little crying towel close by when I do a reading, because it's sometimes the information is so poignant and so emotional. And when I get teary doing a reading, those are not my emotions. Those are the emotions of the person that's coming through.
Mm.
And there there was a one. Okay. Do we have time for me to?
Yeah, we do. It's up to you, though.
Okay. There was a woman that came to me as a last resort because she was a born again Christian, and she had been grieving for her daughter for 3 years. And a friend of ours had told her, you need to stop grieving, and, talk to Sue. So she did. And at first I wasn't getting anything. And I said, look, I'm not getting anything. And we'll just have to reschedule, because, might not be the right time. And then all of a sudden her daughter came through and started giving information. And there was she was with an uncle. And so I gave her the uncle's name, and she said, yeah, that's Uncle, I'll say Bob. That's Uncle Bob. And I said, well, she wants you to know that she's tooling around with Uncle Bob in his um, vintage convertible. And she said, oh, Bob, that was Bob's thing, was vintage cars. And then we talked about some pregnancy losses and other information. And at the end, uh, she felt so good. And she went back to my friend, and they were in another state. And she said, did you tell her anything about me? And he said, I didn't say a word. And he told me that she felt so good that she was done with her grieving. She could let it go. And she went back to her women's group at the church and told them what happened, and that she had come through, and and how at peace she is right now. And they told her that I was speaking with demons. But readings can be life-changing. They really can, when people understand and get messages, and they can understand things a little bit better.
No, I totally agree. And that's the same thing my sister said to my niece. And then the experiences stopped. But, and I was telling my sister, like, you guys have your own psychic mediums, but you say but you're tapping into the Holy Spirit, and other people are tapping into the devil. Like, what's the difference?
Yes. Yeah. The Bible is full of mediums and channels.
Yeah.
They're just called different things.
But they're doing it the correct way in their eyes.
Yeah. Yeah. See, that's a big, big judgment right there.
Yeah, that's crazy. One thing I wanted to ask you really quick was, when people have near-death experiences, their reality, their belief system transitions to the other side, for words to use. Why do you believe that happens? Our thoughts create our reality on the other side?
It's not going to be the same for everyone. Everyone's experience is going to be different, and it's wrapped up in people's belief systems, their belief about death, their belief about the afterlife. Whether they could be an atheist and believe that there is no afterlife. There was a gentleman that came through. He died of alcoholism, and he was an atheist, and he told me that he was in nothingness, that he created nothingness. He didn't know he was creating it at the time, but he was in nothingness for a while until he realized he was still alive. And then things opened up for him, and he was, knew what was going on. A lot of people who are very entrenched in religion, whatever it may be, even in metaphysics, if people are very entrenched on what they think it's like and what it's going to be like for them or other people, nothing is cookie cutter. It all depends on what we create for ourselves. So very religious people sometimes, in my experience, have had a problem transitioning to being without a body, and their expectations are, the pearly gates, and Jesus will come and greet them. This is all a belief system, and they may create that for themselves.
Yeah.
So they can have that experience, but eventually they will get to know more about themselves and understand themselves in a greater way and have more awareness of their true self. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. Do you believe we're not just having a human experience, but we're also having like alien experiences and extraterrestrial, other types of beings? We're just consciousness changing different forms in formless states?
Like, are you talking about, let's say, in the dream state when we go into a different dimension?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Everything is consciousness. Everything. Life is consciousness. The universe is consciousness.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm going to ask you one last question, if you don't mind.
Mm-hmm.
If I could put you on a big screen and everyone was just watching you, whether they liked it or not, what would be your message to the world and in today's world with all the chaos, division, and hate, anger, and fear?
I would say, love yourself. Know yourself. It's very simple. Know thyself. It's a very simple thing, but it's sometimes very difficult for people. And be brave, and take a look at your traumas and your pain, and how that's affecting you and how that's affecting your idiosyncrasies and your personality, and do what you can to become more aware of your own emotions and what drives you, and know that this life is just a blink of an eye, and it matters how we treat ourselves, and it matters how we treat each other. Because every person alive, whether they're the vilest person on the earth or the most saintly, everyone has people that they're connected with in spirit form. And integrity, to me, means taking responsibility for everything that you create. Everything, be responsible for everything you think, everything you feel, and every action you take.
I appreciate it. How do we find you, your links and your website?
My website is mediumunplugged.com. My YouTube channel is just search in YouTube for Susanna Massari. And those are about the only two. We do have I do have a Facebook page for mediumship. That would be Susanna Massari Medium. I do not accept friend requests on my private page. So if you want to go to the mediumship page, that would be wonderful. But mostly my husband and I do videos on YouTube. And so it would be under Susanna Massari.
No problem. Thank you. And I'll post
Thank
that
you.
stuff as well. I'm going to end it with the Marianne Williamson quote.
Mm-hmm.
Marianne Williamson says, "Love is what we are born with. Fear is what we learn. The spiritual journey is the unlearning of fear and prejudices and the acceptance of love back in our hearts. Love is the essential reality of our purpose on earth. To be consciously aware of it, to experience love in ourselves and others is the meaning of life. Meaning does not lie in the things. Meaning lies in us." Marianne Williamson.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate it, and I hope to have you back and talk more about your book.
Thank you. Thank you.
Namastizzle.
Just know we out here. Know we out here working in a major way. Had to speak on it just to make a break. Any given subject, know we make a way. Time to level up on a day-to-day. Know we out here working for the greater good. Expand your mind, broaden your lens the way you should. From the stars to the galaxy to speak on spirituality. Higher understanding for the neighborhood.